This training session will last approximately 40 minutes and will hopefully give you some ideas for supporting remote learning. They're just suggestions and we've limited them to 3 options, but there are other ways you could manage this. A lot of the ideas are more relevant to primary, but there are some ideas at 3rd and 4th level on the section we have that's on the Digital Hub. The section on instructional videos is again primarily at a primary level, however it does cover some fundamental skills that we find that many pupils at secondary are weaker in, so secondary teachers may find this section useful too. And the section on story problems at the end will be quite a different setup from how many secondary schools work, but this could work very effectively in this remote learning environment, particularly with pupils in S1 to S3. As part of this training, we'll aim to explore 3 different options to support high quality teaching and learning in a remote learning environment through the use of materials available on the Digital Hub, instructional videos, and story problems. We'll explore the management of this if you're opting for a group rotation approach, and we'll look at getting access to the Highland Numeracy and Mathematics shared drive if you don't know where it already is. If you've not accessed our training before, then all the recorded training sessions and PDFs of all the slides can be found on both the Highland Digital Hub and the Highland Numeracy blog in the CPD section. The following 2 resources will allow you to use digital manipulatives online with your pupils, so I'd encourage you to explore them. These include the Math Learning Centre and the manipulatives section of MathSpot. There are pros and cons to the functionality of both, so depending on what I want the children to do, sometimes I prefer to use one rather than the other. So starting off with the Highland Digital Hub, we've got a large number of materials available on the Digital Hub already. I've added the link in here, but if you go to the Digital Hub and click on Digital Learning on the sidebar, you'll find this there. There are options for numeracy, literacy, and health and wellbeing, and all 3 are organised by level. Within the Maths section, within each level, you'll find the content grouped by the same broad themes at each level. If you've got multi-composites or a wide range within your class, this structure might help you to differentiate learning for your pupils. We'll talk through some of the main themes just now, so you've got an idea of what's available. Each level has a contents page, so you can easily navigate to the section that you're interested in if you have a particular type of activity in mind for your learners. In the Games and Activities at Home section, you'll find links to relevant material from websites like Enrich, Ucubed and Parent Zone, among other things. We've tried to pick out a few different activities and give a rough description of each so you can more easily find content relevant to your specific objectives and your learners without needing to wade through the large amounts of content available online. For the section on maths activities in the home, the ideas are all things that can be carried out with a maths objective in mind, using materials commonly found around the home. Here's an example at early and 1st level to give you an idea of the type of content. Again, we've given the broad area that it relates to and a brief description of the activity. There are plenty of ways you could adapt and enrich these activities further if you wanted to. Card games can be a fun and useful way to practice number facts that your pupils understand and are quite confident with, and you're just trying to improve automaticity and have a bit of fun. The suggestions for activities have come from Annie's Amazing Mental Maths Games, which is a purchasable booklet, but Annie has kindly given us permission to share some of the ideas here. Here's an example of one of the games called Pyramid. For each game you'll see the broad objective, although these are often adaptable to suit different number ranges or levels. So here you can see the focus is on practicing addition and subtraction within 20 using 2, 3, 4 and 5 numbers. Then there's a brief description of what you need to play, followed by instructions for the activity. We've also included a section on exploring maths through stories at home. The majority of the books we've used for younger pupils were part of the Read, Write, Count bags, so pupils should have these available at home. If they don't, where possible, we've provided a link to the author reading the story online. The stories could be explored with the class or group online, or depending on the pupil's circumstances and reading level, they could have the book read to them by someone at home, or read it to themselves. There are then suggestions for activities that could be linked to the book. So those were the materials available on the Digital Learning Hub, and we'll now move on to the use of instructional videos. So in terms of finding the videos, if you go to the Highland Numeracy and Mathematics YouTube channel, it should come up if you just search within YouTube for it, and then select playlists. All the videos that come up under the independent learning categories that we'll talk about in a minute can be found in the playlists section, starting with quiz. The remainder of the title will tell you what number range it focuses on. For example, quiz multdiv 3-4 is all related to multiplication and division facts for the 3 and 4 times table. You'll find that there are several different quizzes related to the 3 and 4 times table that all focus on slightly different concepts within multiplication and division. Other videos that would be suitable for group learning are named more specifically, and you may need to just scan the playlist to find what you're looking for. Some of the quiz videos would also be suitable for group learning as well. We strongly recommend that you watch the videos before using them as part of a group or before you set them as an independent learning activity. I'll aim to create a spreadsheet with the different videos available and direct links so that they're easier for you to find rather than having to search through the content on YouTube. And I'll aim to put this in a folder entitled Videos on the shared drive. Not all the content that we've got is up there at the moment, and we don't have content covering all levels, but we'll aim to add a wider range of videos over the first few days back so that there is content at a range of levels for people. We'll discuss two options here, but again, there are other ways to use these, and these are just a couple of suggestions that we think will be useful and effective. So the first way you could use the videos is for independent learning. So the pupils would watch the video independently, you'd provide them with the link, and then you would provide a series of follow-up questions. We've got a few examples here which we'll talk through in more detail, but again, these are just ideas and there are many other options. So for example, you could set the video and then set the pupils some closed single answer questions that relate to the video. Or you could do something a bit more exploratory using something like a think board. Pupils could either just draw this on a piece of paper, or you could use something like Jamboard and create a digital version, and we'll look at that in a moment. Or you could give a more open-ended, challenging problem with a range of solutions. If you're in a school that's part of the Scottish Attainment Challenge, we have got quizzes that go alongside these videos, so if you contact me directly on sarah.leakey@highland.gov.uk, I can get you set up with these. They will be available more widely in the future, but it's not possible to set everyone up on them at the moment. So this is an example of one of the videos that we've got on our YouTube channel. It's about understanding the meaning of the equal sign. It's not the only one that we've got on this particular concept. It's something that a lot of pupils, both at primary and secondary, have difficulty with, so it's definitely worth exploring. I'm not going to play the video right now on here, but if you go to the YouTube channel, you'll find it quite easily, or if you've got the slides, you can click on it and it will play directly. So following on from the video, you could set the pupils some closed single answer questions. These would be useful if you just wanted the pupils to get some practice with the ideas related to the content in the video. The assumption is that they would already be reasonably confident with the material, as these are quite abstract problems with no visuals or materials alongside them. If pupils were less confident, you could encourage them to use the digital manipulatives on either mathspot.com or on the Math Learning Centre. Or they could use countable items that they might have to hand at home, like bits of pasta or small toys, to help them figure out the solutions to the problems too. Another option is to use think boards. This is just one example of a way you can set out a think board, but there are many different ways depending on your intended learning for the pupils. This one has an abstract expression in the middle, 8 plus 5. It doesn't actually relate to the video we just looked at or linked to before, but it might be relevant to one of the other videos that you set your pupils. This particular one has 4 boxes around the outside where pupils have to show 2 different strategies for solving the problem, and they show how they did this with concrete materials. And we'll look at how you could do that digitally, because the pupils aren't necessarily going to have concrete materials at home, but they could also just do a drawing in that section instead of using the concrete materials there, and also creating a word problem for the expression as well. So we'll look at some options for doing this, including something like Jamboard. The web address for it is there, jamboard.google.com. That's for the web browser version. There is an app version and the functionality is slightly better on it. It gives you a few more options, but both of them are good. If you're doing this with a group rather than as an independent activity, you could share your screen and annotate your screen as the pupils give you ideas to record on the think board on Jamboard. Alternatively, you could share the link to the Jamboard with your pupils so they can annotate it themselves. So you'd make a template and then you'd give the link to them. So this could be done either within a breakout room and get pupils to do it in groups, or it could be done as an independent activity and you just give individuals the link. You can get a link to share the template with pupils by clicking on the blue button, so where that big red arrow is in the corner there. If you want pupils to work on this independently, you'll need to make multiple copies of the same template. The templates are relatively easy to set up once you become familiar with Jamboard. So the one that I've got there, the picture of it, took about 2 minutes to do. And of course, you could just get the pupils to do this on paper. It doesn't need to be digital. And then if possible, they could take a photo and send it on to you. So if you're doing this online using something like Jamboard, the pupils can take a screenshot of the concrete materials on sites like mathspot.com or Math Learning Centre and then paste them into their Jamboard, as you can see in the example that I've got there in the bottom left-hand corner. This is another example of a think board, but it's set up slightly differently. It starts with a word problem this time instead of the more abstract problem that we had before. And pupils are then asked to represent their ideas using a drawing, using concrete materials. Again, this is just a screenshot from mathspot.com that was from, and also using an equation. And this might be an equation that represents what the problem is asking, so what this word problem is asking before they know the solution. But they might also record an equation of how they solved the problem, so 2 things won't necessarily be the same. And here's another example that could be used for grouping in place value. So again, not related to that video that we saw before, but could be another video that you've used with the pupils. The number 32 is in the middle, and pupils have to use items that they might find at home to show different ways of making 32. So you can see the example with the playing cards. We've got 3 10s and a 2. You've got the pasta, so the individual pasta bits are countable in ones, but you can see there they've been grouped into 10s and labelled as 10s with a sort of pen ring around them, and then you've got the 2 extra ones down there. They didn't quite fit in the box. And then there's 2 different versions with money as well. So the one on the right is more similar to the 2 examples at the top there, and then the one on the left shows a different way of making the same number. And this is another example of a think board that 2 P3 pupils were working on as part of an independent follow-up activity. So another option for following on from the instructional videos is to set a more open-ended task for the pupils' independent learning. These types of tasks are great for getting in lots of practice, but also supporting the pupils to think more deeply about the problems and providing a broad range of challenge with opportunities to spot patterns and relationships. And it would be a really good one to follow up the independent learning with a group discussion to share the patterns and relationships that pupils noticed or the strategies that they used to approach the problem. So you can see here in this particular problem, and this one does connect back to that video that we were looking at, explores the kind of the meaning of the equal sign and understanding how to write equations. So the instructions are: using only the digits 1 to 9 at most 1 time each, make this equation true. And then you can choose whether you include follow-up instructions or kind of set parameters for the problem to make it easier or more challenging. So how many different ways can you come up with? Can you find a solution that will create the smallest value for both expressions? Can you find a solution that will create the largest value for both expressions? We'll look at some examples of the types of things that pupils could put in these boxes here to make the equations true. But if you want some more ideas, then you can go to openmiddle.com, and there's lots of examples on there. They are organised by grade level for the US. There's roughly a kind of 2-year gap, so grade 1 roughly corresponds to P3, grade 2 roughly corresponds to P4, and so on. It's not exactly like that. There is a bit of a difference, but that's a rough idea. So here's an example of something that a pupil might have put in to make this equation true. We've got 5 plus 4 equals 6 plus 3. So we can see that the expression on the left-hand side of the equal sign is equal to 9. And the expression on the right hand side of the equal sign is also equal to 9, so therefore they are equal to one another. Encouraging the pupils to kind of think about what they notice. So a pupil might have noticed after writing this, or perhaps used this relationship to generate their idea in the first place, that the expression on the right is similar to the one on the left, but the first addend, 6, is 1 more than 5, and the second addend, 3, is 1 less than 4, and this is how the 2 expressions can be equal. They might then use this idea to help them generate other examples like this one. So 7 plus 2 equals 8 plus 1. And again, this will help them to generate a deeper understanding of the meaning of the equal sign, while also understanding how to manipulate equations, as well as practicing some basic facts within 10. Another option for the instructional videos is to use them as part of a group discussion rather than independent learning. And depending on the content and what you want to get out of the session, this could be done by either a teacher or a PSA. If it's carried out by a PSA, then make sure you've got time and opportunity to give guidance on how to use it, and allowing them an opportunity to watch the video before they use it with a group, just as you would yourself. So you could either watch the video together as a small group. You could watch it as a whole class, but a small group will probably work better for discussion. Pause the video at the points where it suggests, or other points if questions or comments come up. Allow pupils thinking time. This is really, really important. And give them time to share their ideas with one another. And then resume the video and pause at the next prompt within it. So this is an example of a video that could be used for this type of work. This particular one has 3 parts to it. The video itself is about incrementing in units of 1/5. The first part has an introduction to the materials and to fifths, and just sort of general understanding about fractions and improper fractions and mixed numbers. The second part to it has a choral count with materials visible, and there's also an opportunity to discuss patterns and relationships. And then part 3 has some follow-up questions related to addition and subtraction of fractions, mixed numbers, improper fractions, converting between these, and again opportunities to discuss patterns and relationships that they notice. So each of those 3 parts might be a 15 to 20 minute discussion in its own right, so you wouldn't necessarily watch that whole video in one session. I think the video itself is just over 15 minutes long, but it would, with the discussion time, it will take you a lot longer to work through it. So go for the kind of quality rather than quantity. Have the rich discussion. Don't just kind of play the video and go through the motions of watching it. Choral counting was mentioned in the previous video in that part 2 section, and you could use it as a follow-up to this as well, using a more abstract choral count with just the numerals. So this could be carried out as a whole class or as a small group again. The photo on the right there is one that was carried out with a class. This was in a classroom, but the ideas are easily transferable online. And you can record the count on something like Google Canvas or Jamboard. So you could be sharing your screen, and as the pupils are counting together, you could be recording on Google Canvas or Jamboard the count so everybody can see it, and then you've got it displayed up there to discuss the patterns and relationships that they see, and it's quite easy to switch between colours and things on both of those programs, so you can record the patterns quite easily there. If you want more information on choral counting, if that's something that's not familiar to you, then go to the Highland Numeracy and Mathematics shared drive. If you go to planning documents and then look at the choral counting folder, you'll see a choral counting getting started guide, a planning template, and some example plans. So that should be quite good for getting you going. And if you want to find out more about choral counting and also counting collections, then you can watch the CPD sessions that we have online about these. And again, those are on the Highland Digital Hub and also on the CPD section of the Highland Numeracy blog. So the final type of remote learning activity that we wanted to share was the use of story problems. We used these with really great effect during the last lockdown with pupils in P4 and P5 doing work related to fractions. The improvements that we saw were really positive, so we know that this can have a good impact in a remote learning environment as well as in the classroom. If you're not familiar with the use of story problems and you want more guidance, you can go to the shared drive again. So back to the planning documents, but this time to story problems. And there you'll find a summary of some of the story problem types. You'll find a planning template and also some example plans there as well. You can also find recorded CPD related to using story problems at different levels, again on the Highland Digital Hub or the CPD section of the Highland Numeracy blog. If there's time, I'll aim to put a recording up with more detailed information about what we actually did during the last lockdown, if people want some more ideas about using this approach. If I've got time to do it, then I'll put it up on the Highland Numeracy blog and put it on the Digital Hub as well, so you'll see it there when it's available. So in terms of using the story problems, it could run like this. This is just an example. Again, it's not the only way, but you could introduce the story problem to your whole class. So everybody's solving the same problem, but you can differentiate them quite easily, although the actual structure of the problem is the same for everybody. Give the pupils time to go away and solve the problem using drawings, annotations, so that you can see their thinking and their strategies. And they can use these as a springboard for discussion as part of a group session afterwards. The pupils email you a photo of their work, and then you can follow up online with small groups. So putting their photos onto something like Google Slides or Google Canvas, Jamboard, or something like that, so that others can see their work as you're discussing it. You'd select a few pupils' work in advance and think really carefully about the order that you'll share these in and why you're choosing to share these, how you're going to connect different solutions and strategies to one another. Get pupils to talk through their strategies. Are there any strategies that are similar to one another? Did anybody use a strategy or a drawing that you hadn't thought of? So getting the pupils to consider these questions. And did you prefer this strategy to your own, and why? And can you use these ideas that we shared or discussed today to support you to solve the next story problem? So you'd then give pupils a follow-up story problem at the end of the session that they then go away, solve independently, and email you the photo again. So this is an example of a problem that some P5s were given in the last lockdown, and some examples of their work. So you can see here the problem at Toby's birthday party. He has some chocolate logs for people to share. If 4 children share 3 chocolate logs and everyone gets the same amount with none left over, how much will they each get? So you can see the drawings there that the pupils did, and there's also some explanations there about how they ended up using each other's strategies and how you saw these strategies coming through in subsequent sessions that we ran. So again, I'll try and do a recording of more detail of that so that people can see if they want to. So in this section, we're going to take a look at how you might manage this remotely. The ideas should work if you have pupils in school, if they come under their key worker or vulnerable group. And again, this is just a suggestion, and you'll need to adapt this depending on your context and your pupils. So depending on the content of what you're exploring, you might have groups that are mixed with a wide range of current understanding in each group. You might have mixed groups with a narrow range of current understanding in each group if you want to target something a bit more specific. Or you might have similar groups, so pupils that have similar strengths and difficulties within the same group, and again that would be if you want to target things a bit more specifically. There are values and pros and cons to each of these. It just depends on what you want to get out of the session. So this is a timetable of kind of how a week might look. You've got the days of the week across the top, you've got any whole class sessions up here, and then we've got maybe 4 different groups within the class. So you might, on Monday, you might get the whole class together, introduce the first story problem to everybody, and you might also use that whole class time to set the independent activities. So this might be some of the things that we discussed earlier, something from the home learning section from the Digital Hub that we talked about first, or it might be an instructional video that we talked about in the section after that. And then on that Monday, you're going to give pupils some independent time to solve that story problem, and the pupils are going to email the teacher a photo of their solutions and their drawings. So then you'll see kind of Tuesday and Wednesday is a sort of a rotation where you'll see all 4 groups over the 2 days, and then the same kind of idea on the Thursday and Friday. So this section here isn't really a whole class section, you're just going to see the groups, but you'll need to share a new story problem with each group at the end of their session. So here you'll be seeing group 1 first, so you'll be having the story problem group discussion. So this is when you'll be taking photos of their work, having a discussion about what they did, how they did it, what their strategies were, and so on and so forth, and encouraging the kids to discuss different ideas between themselves as well. And then you'll see group 2 after that, and again, same type of thing, a group discussion, but based on the work of pupils from that group. And then the other 2 groups, group 3 and group 4, they're just getting on with that independent work that you've set them, so you won't see them that day. And then on Wednesday, group 1 and group 2, you saw them on the Tuesday, so they're solving the new story problem that you set, and also any other independent activities that you'd set from Monday. And then you're going to catch up with group 3 and group 4, having that discussion from the story problem from the work that they've emailed you. And then on Thursday, you may have already set some work on Monday, so you may not need to set new independent activities, but if you haven't, you could get a whole class get together and set some new work for pupils if needed. And then again, these sort of rotations follow the same pattern, so you're going to catch up with group 1, then group 2, group 3 and 4 are going to be solving the new story problem, and they're going to be doing some independent activities. And then on the Friday, you're going to switch those around. So group 1 and group 2 are going to be doing an independent activity, and group 3 and group 4 are going to be in a discussion group with you. And on Friday, you might do some sort of choral counting activity. Again, an opportunity to get the whole class together. You'll need to see how this works. It depends on your kids and whether you've got a composite or not. And how many kids you've got in your class as to how well that will work as a whole class activity. But you can always do it as groups if that's preferable. So as I said, they're just ideas, and it's one way that might work quite effectively for managing your different groups, different kids, and being able to have that quality discussion rather than trying to just sort of deliver something and then there's not really much of an opportunity to discuss anything because there's too many pupils online. So finally, I'm just going to have a quick look at how to get access to the shared drive if you don't have access to it already. So everybody within the council should already have access, although there do appear to be a few exceptions. So if you follow these steps and it still doesn't work, you still don't seem to have access, then please feel free to email me on sarah.leakey@highland.gov.uk and I'll give you access. But please make sure you've tried to follow these steps before emailing me though, because this is usually successful for most people. So if you don't seem to have access or you don't know where to find the Highland Numeracy and Mathematics shared drive, then first of all, open Google Drive, so drive.google.com. Make sure you're signed in as yourself. So for example, I am sarah.leakey@highlandschools.net. Most people are first name dot last name at whatever your ASG is .org.uk. And then click on shared drive. So for some people, you'll then just see it sitting there in your shared drives, and that'll be that. If it's not there, then step 2, when you're in the shared drive section, look near the top right hand corner for some blue writing that says hidden shared drives. So you can see that with the red arrow pointing at it there. So click on that. And then when you're in the hidden shared drives area, you should see the Numeracy and Mathematics drive. Click on this to open it. And when you're inside, look for the title Highland Numeracy and Mathematics. and click on the arrow next to the title. I've just put a screenshot of that in the corner there so you can you've got a rough idea of what it should look like. And this will reveal a drop-down menu. Click on the option that says Unhide Shared Drive, and when you return to your shared drive dashboard, the drive should now be visible to you. You can unhide it again at any time by following the same steps. If for whatever reason you don't see this drive in either your shared drives or your hidden shared drives, then it does mean that you probably don't have access, in which case, as I said, just email me and we can sort that out for you. So hopefully that's been helpful, giving you some ideas of the types of things that might work for some quality teaching and learning related to numeracy and mathematics as part of the remote learning that we're moving back into again. Okay, thank you.